So you're at a party and a friend asks you to take a picture. You don't need these tips. If you see a cool bug on the floor while at the park, most of these tips won't be beneficial. And these aren't the tips if your kid is about to take their first step and you need a quick photo. In those cases, just take the picture. Heyo, this is Matt, and this is part 2 of my phone photography series, 10 tips for the best quality photos. If you haven't seen part 1, it was a battle of camera versus phone, where I took these pics and let you see the difference between the two, or maybe not see the difference. I don't normally take my toy photos with my phone, so there was a little learning curve at the beginning when I was first doing that challenge. I came up with these tips to maximize the quality of your photos. Jumping right in, tip number 1, adjust the phone settings. For my toy photography, I always want them to be the best. I could just throw them down like this and take the photo, but that's not fun for me. The first step to achieve the best quality is you're going to have to tell your device to use the highest file size and resolution. So please keep this in mind, especially when going through all of these tips. Just because your camera can shoot, let's say 8K video, it doesn't mean that your video quality is gonna be amazing. Oh, your phone has 132 megapixels. It doesn't mean your photos are going to be good. But in our quest to have the maximum quality, why would you not want to select the highest available quality? If you can only shoot at 1080 by 1080 pixel image for whatever camera you have, then that's the highest available. So choose that. So for my standard iPhone camera, I go to settings, camera, and then find format under photo mode. And I see 2 options. The MP stands for megapixels. So the 24 MP option here is better. More megapixels usually means more detail available in the image. There's also this option under camera capture that allows either high efficiency or most compatible. Most compatible is the option to choose if you want the best quality. So what are some reasons to not choose the best resolution? First is whether the phone or camera, and for either photos or video, is space. And that's either on your phone or computer. If it's constantly running out of space and you can't keep up with all of the high quality stuff, then you might need to go with the lower quality option. However, storage is pretty cheap nowadays, so it's extremely easy to back up your stuff. So I would recommend investing in some storage to help open space on your computer. Also, higher quality files might require a higher powered computer or phone. And you're gonna figure out your limits, and whatever is the best you can do is the best that you can do. Another reason to not choose the max resolution is if you're doing like time lapses or stop motion, you might be taking hundreds of photos and it can be really overwhelming, like even on a good device. One app I will recommend on here is the Lightroom app to take photos. I know there's a few other apps out there that people have listed. I can list some, or you can go through the comments. If you used a different one, like feel free to comment. A lot of the settings and tips should be like applicable to all of it. But I use the Lightroom app. I feel like the interface was extremely like user friendly. For some of the other settings coming up, I will show both the Lightroom version and the standard camera app on the iPhone. I want to add screen brightness under this tip as well. You might have it set automatically, but either way, you don't want your screen to be too dark to where you might think the setup is dark. So set it to where you can see your setup easily. Trust your eyes. Tip number 2, shoot in RAW. I did a video over RAW you can check out here. And to sum it up, when you shoot in JPEG, yes, the file sizes are smaller, but the phone will automatically edit it. From the brightness to colors to noise, JPEG photos have those settings baked in. And you could still edit JPEG files, but with RAW files, you will have full control after taking the photo. On the iPhone camera settings, same as before, there is this option to select RAW. I'm not sure if all recent iPhones have that. Mine is the iPhone 15 Pro Max, which at the time is one of the newer ones. And on the Lightroom app, you select Tip number 3, use a guide. The most common guide for both phones and cameras will be the rule of thirds grid. One thing that's a little different with most phones is where the cameras are located in relation to the screen. This can kind of throw off certain angles of pictures because your phone might be lined up perfectly in the center, but the camera is over here. It's on the left side. The photo is going to look off. It's not going to be lined up like you want it. So obviously this isn't that big of a deal. Moving the camera and aligning, if it's in the center, it's fine. But just to make life easier in general is just turn the grid on. It doesn't mean you have to align the subject on the rule of thirds. It's just there to help you and to guide you and frame your shots. So on the iPhone, under the same settings tab, there is an option for grid. And on the Lightroom app, you can check it out here. Tip number 4, clean your lens. We are ready to start shooting. Almost. Not sure if this has happened to you before when taking selfies or a friend's picture with the phone, but the image looks all cloudy, depending on the light, it looks almost blurry. I remember doing some videos where I honestly didn't know what it was. I thought it was just because of the lighting, in general. And then it wasn't until later that I realized it was there was a smudge, a smear on the lens. So usually it's a fingerprint that can smear, and if the light hits that just right, it could look kind of cool, but if not, it's not something you want. It's not good. So just a quick tip to wipe your lens down, and I would recommend a wipe for glasses, like a microfiber cloth, because some other material might scratch your lens, and using your finger might solve the problem, but it also might add to it, with all the oils and stuff. Tip number 5, stabilize. For all of my toy photos with my main camera, I do use a tripod, and sometimes it's a regular one like this one. Or if I'm outside and I want to get low to the ground, I do have this inverted one. It's just a mode that allows me to flip it. And when it comes to using the phone, I found it even more crucial to stabilize. It's definitely possible to still get the best shot while handheld, but whether you have shaky hands like mine or not, having the camera stabilized opens up more possibilities with the settings. I still used my same tripod, but because it's lighter and smaller, you can get away with a lighter and smaller tool to stabilize. Tip number 6, use manual settings. Now we are starting to get a bit more technical. Most of toy or product photography is studio based. It's not run and gun like weddings or wildlife photography. So learning to use manual settings will make your work better and easier in the long run. This is also a huge benefit of doing toy photography. It gives you the opportunity to learn. You don't have to worry about people complaining that you're taking too long with the setup or the lighting or whatever. You don't have to wait for the right moment and positioning of the bird. You don't need to stop if it starts raining. Well, maybe if you're taking it outside, but you are in complete control. It's the perfect time to practice lighting and practice these manual settings. Like most tips, I encourage you to experiment, take a million pictures, mess around with the different settings and see what does what. The big 3 when it comes to the settings are the ISO, the shutter speed, and the aperture. So these make up what we call the exposure triangle. I don't want to go into too much detail for this video because I have gone over them, but ISO controls your camera's sensitivity to light. By increasing the ISO, your image, it will get brighter, but it's also going to introduce more noise. Ideally, you want to keep this as low as possible, like 100, but if you need to increase it, then do so. I would say about 95% of my photos are shot at ISO 100. Shutter speed controls how fast the shutter moves on your camera. So if you're trying to get a perfect shot of a dog running, you do want a higher shutter speed because it's gonna snap faster and it's gonna freeze the motion. So if your subject isn't moving like a toy, then the speed doesn't really matter too much. But as far as the lighting goes, the slower you have the shutter speed, the more your camera sees. The faster the shutter, the less light and the less time you're giving your camera to be open and see what you want it to see. So it is going to be darker. Faster shutter speed will darken your image, and a slower shutter speed will brighten your image. And similar with the aperture, it's also known as the f-stop, and it controls the iris of your lens. And the lower the number, the lower that f-stop number is, the wider your iris on the lens is going to be, meaning more light is going to enter into your camera, which means the brighter your image will be. And vice versa, the higher the number, the more narrow it's going to be. It's going to let in less light, so it's going to be darker. But this aperture also does control how much is in focus in your image. So if you have the smaller number aperture, it's letting in more light, but it's also going to be blurring, and that field of view is going to be less. So less things will be in perfect focus. And then if you have the higher f-stop number, that means more stuff is going to be in focus. Tip number 7, double check the focus. When it comes to photography, one thing I hate is missing focus. With toy photography, it can be somewhat difficult because the subjects are so small. And one huge tip, whether it's on the camera or the phone, is to magnify. I'm not saying zoom in, but most cameras have this little magnifying glass that allows you to zoom in on the viewfinder, and on that you can see it closer and you can see your subjects closer. So you can see what's in focus. It's designed to check focus, so use it. If your subject isn't moving, and if your camera isn't moving because it's stabilized, you have no excuse for missing focus. You just gotta line it up. Unless you're outside and it's windy or you're blasting something, then stuff might move or cause some slight movements here and there. Another feature for focusing is peak focus. And this shows an outline of color marking the sharpest parts of your image, meaning what's in focus. The basic iPhone camera doesn't have this feature, at least at the time I'm filming this, but the Lightroom app does. And that's why I like it. Everything is set, everything is stabilized. You click your phone to snap the pic, but it moves your phone. You moved your phone when you clicked. Even the slightest movement can ruin a perfect focus. So what I do, even on my main camera, is use a countdown shutter. You can set it to 2 or 3 seconds, and then you click it, and then step away. It counts down, and then it snaps without anything else moving. An even safer way, and another way, is using a trigger, which sometimes I use outside when I'm doing explosion shots. But also with phones being extra fancy nowadays, I know there's a smartwatch feature that allows you to activate the camera. Like on the Apple Watch to the phones, you can just tap it on your watch and then it takes the picture of your phone if it's set up. Not sure if other phones and watches have that connectivity or not. Tip number 9 is all about the lighting. I get a lot of comments asking about how fancy my camera is. For one, it's not that fancy, and 2, it's all about the lighting. Lighting is king. It's been a while since I have done a lighting tutorial, but I do have a few, like on my computer, my notes coming up. One basic setup is a key light from the front and kind of off to the side. Like I even have this here that's the key light, and then having a second light from the back on the opposite side of the key light. So you don't need super fancy lights. Use a lamp, use the sun, use the window light. I would say use your phone light even, but for this, you're taking your picture with your phone. I don't recommend using the flash on your phone since it's usually just, a direct flash and that's really hard to work with unless you're kind of going for that look. But experiment with different lighting setups and see what you like, whether it's a lamp or a fancy light or the sun, like sunset, different times of day, where's the sun at? So you have to experiment with these settings and with the lighting to see what you like best. And subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss out on my future lighting tutorials. Our final tip is shooting with the edit in mind. And that's a tip I'm trying to put into practice more for my own photography. I feel like I would kind of do it, but now I'm trying to be more intentional with it. Ideally, you want the raw in-camera photo to be as good as possible. It's extremely difficult, if not impossible in some cases, to edit bad lighting, like to make a photo with really bad lighting look good. So the setup and the settings all need to be good in camera, like before you take the picture. But while you're setting up, you need to keep in mind how you're going to edit. Like, are you going to change these colors? Do you think this part's going to be like more lit up, brighter? Are you going to add any effects, any smoke? Is this going to cover up with some haze? Keeping the edit in mind will help your setups, will help your creativity and taking the pictures. So try to have that final desired image in mind, and it's going to help you with the setup and the lighting and your settings. So if you're new to photography, then this might be the hardest part. But after doing a few images, you will start to develop a style. So keep taking pictures. Take 1,000,000 pictures. Figure out what settings and what lighting setups you like. And if you want to maximize the quality, then go back and try these tips out. Create and inspire.